So last time we introduced the previous lecture, we talked about the slope-intercept. Okay, we call it the slope-intercept formula, which was this: y equals mx plus b. We also saw the standard formula. Standard form of a line is something like this: ax plus by equals c. Also talked about the slope formula. So this is the slope-intercept form. Slope form also. So was y, we called it m actually. Called it m, and that was y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So you can call this a little review here. A review of the previous formulas we talked about. Okay, again, we talked about this in detail in the previous lecture. We saw how to use this form to graph. This is the slope m, this is the y-intercept. That's why we call it slope-intercept. The standard form of lines is this one. This one is more convenient because we can easily see the slope m and the intercept. And when we graphed them, we started from this, and then we went to the rise and run. Because m is the rise or run. We saw the formula to find the slope itself using 2 points. If you have 2 points A and B, we can plug them into this and find m. Again, we discussed this in detail in the previous lecture. You may want to go review those later. So today we're going to see another formula called the point-slope formula. So the point-slope formula is just another form, another version of this, basically. That's what the slope formula point is, slope or point slope. And we use that to write equations of a line. So we're going to use that to write writing equations of lines. So most of the time you'll be given the equation in one of these forms, but sometimes you'll have to write your own. We'll have to come up with our own equation. As we saw last time, we saw that if we have m and if we have b, we can write our equation. So the first method here is using this form here, slope-intercept form. So the formula again is this: y equals mx plus b. So for example, if you're given, if you have m, let's say the slope is maybe 2 and b is -5. So to complete this equation, all you have to do is basically just plug m into m and plug b into b. So if you plug those, you end up with the equation. So it will be y equals m times x. M in this case is 2, that's the slope. X stays there, plus or minus b happens to be -5. That's it, that's the equation of the line using the slope and b. Okay, if they're given to you, all you have to do is plug them and you have your equation. That's the first one and the easiest one. It's only simple step of plugging m and b. But sometimes we don't have b, we just have m, and instead of b, this is the y-intercept again. As we said last time, for example, if this is the line, if this is our line, the slope-intercept is where the y-axis, the vertical axis here, where the y-axis meets the line. That's what we call the y-intercept, or the b, this point. Or for instance, in this case, it would be something like this. Let's say -5 is here. Maybe something like that. This is not exactly the line of this, but it has to go through -5. So this b we talk about here is this point here. That's why we call it the y-intercept. So b is also called the y-intercept because it's the intersection of the line and the y-axis. You still have to use the rise and run the other day to graph this. So that's the easiest one. So if you have m and b, slope and intercept, you use the slope-intercept form. Just plug them here and you have your equation. Second case is if you have the slope. Let's say we have the slope, but not the y-intercept. Slope or point slope. Okay, so this is a slope-intercept, again, because this is a slope, this is intercept. The point slope, as the name implies, meaning we need a point and the slope. So let's take a point here, for example, point P, maybe 1 and 3. And let's take a slope, maybe -4. So we're going to learn how to take use this information and write an equation. Or write an equation either in slope-intercept form or the standard form. So all the equations of lines are always in one of these forms. This is a formula on how to find the slope when you don't have it. Luckily here we have it. M is given, M is given. If we don't have it, then we need this formula to find it. Okay, so let's write an equation using just this information. So as you know, we need M and we need B. Unfortunately here we have M, but we don't have B. So we can't use this formula right away. What we're going to do is we're going to use the slope-intercept or point slope form, which basically comes from here. If we take this slope form, if we cross multiply it, we turn this into a fraction. If we cross multiply this, the result will be what we call the point slope formula. So let's see how that looks like. Let's start with this side of the multiplication. We're going to times 1 by this numerator, y1 minus y2, or the other way, y2 minus y1. Then you multiply that way. So m times the denominator here in parentheses, so m times x2 minus x1. Okay, so that's what we call the point slope formula. It's just a derivative of this mx or this slope m formula. Just cross multiply them, you get this point slope formula. So if you have the m, the slope, and a point, we utilize those to write the equation of the line. So first you want to write this down. If you forget this one, again, it's easy. You can get it by cross multiplying this. And then the point that we have here, let's label it x1, y1. Then we have our slope here, which is here. So we're going to plug x1, actually it's y1 here. Okay, x1, y1, and m. All these will be plugged into this equation, and will be almost done. So you don't want to replace these y2 and x2. Those are fine, just leave them there. So each equation has, most of the time, has y and x, x and y. Sometimes just x, sometimes just y. when the lines are vertical or horizontal, but in this case, so we're going to plug the x1. So the y1 goes here, and the x1 goes here. The m would be plugged here. So the only thing that you don't, again, you don't plug or replace is y2 and x2. Those will stay in the equation. Okay, so let's plug that and see what happens. So we have y2 minus y1, which is from here, that's 3, equal m, again it's given, it's -4, parentheses x2, again you don't want to replace x2, that stays, minus finally x1, which is again comes from the point, that's why we call it point slope. There's a point and there's a slope, so this is 1. And that's pretty much almost the equation. We just need to simplify it a little bit. We're going to do a little distribution here. So we're going to try to simplify it a little bit so it looks like this. We're going to try to keep the y by itself on one side and have the rest on the other side. At this point, we don't need to call these y2 and x2. We can just call them y and x because we no longer have y1 and x1 to confuse them with. So we're just going to call them y and x. So y minus 3, -4, -4 times x minus 1. So we want the y to be by itself, so we need to cancel the -3 by adding 3 to both sides. But before we do that, we have to clear the parentheses here. We're going to distribute before we can remove the -3 from it. So y minus 3 will be -4 times x and +4. One last step, get rid of the -3. Again, we want the y by itself. We're going to simplify it so the equation looks in this form, something like this, which is better than the standard form. This again gives you the slope, gives you the b. You can easily graph it using the y-intercept and the right and the run of the slope, as we did in detail in the previous lecture. All right, final step, +3, +3. So that cancels, so y equals -4x plus 7. And that's it, that's our final equation. So we didn't have anything, only had a point and the slope. That's why we use the Pointslope formula, which is this one. Okay, so we plugged the point here, the m here, simplified a little bit, and we get our equation. So again, this is the slope. That's the slope m. And this is the intercept, b or y-intercept. B or the y-intercept. And that's basically how you write the equation, okay? So again, sometimes we are given the equations, other time we need to write them ourselves. So these are two methods. So if you have m and b, that's the easiest one. Slope, if you have the slope and y-intercept, m and b, it's easy, just plug them, use the slope-intercept form. But if you have a point and the slope, we use the point slope, which is that one. The third case is when we don't have the slope. So far we had the slope every time. Here, we had it here. Now we're going to see what happens when we don't have the slope. Just 2 points. So now we're going to see using 2 points. Instead of m and b, we don't have n, we don't have m, we don't have b, but we just have 2 points. And we're going to see how to write the equation of the line like this using just 2 points. Okay, so we're going to need, say, A. So say 3 and 2. in the second point, which we're going to call maybe 2 here and 4. Okay, so the question again is write an equation for this line. We don't know anything about the line other than these 2 points. We don't know the slope, we don't know the y-intercept. All that's given is this. It's not as easy as here. When you have both m and b, very simple, you plug them right away and you're done. Or if you have m point and slope, you use the Pointslope formula. Now we have nothing but these. So let's see how to write an equation of this line, something in this form, using nothing but these 2 points. So this is going to be it's going to require a lot more work than the previous ones because we have nothing. We have to basically work for both, work to get both. So the first thing you want to do is you want to find the slope. It's very important for a line. We need to have the slope. If it's given, that's good. If not, we need to find it. And usually you would have enough information. We know the formula to find the slope. So find the slope first using the slope form. M equals this. So that used only to find the slope right away. And later, as we saw, this also can be turned into point slope. We're going to need that later. But for now, just use this. So slope M is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And as we saw last time in the previous lecture, we saw how to find the slope using 2 points. Let's do that again. Basically, all we have to do is plug all these values into this, and we will have our slope. So to do that, we first need to label these points. So that's the first point. Let's call this x1, y1. That's the second point. We're going to call it x2 and y2. That's all we need for these. So there's 4 of them. We have 4 here. So once we plug those, we should have our slope. So y2 is 4 minus y1, which is 2, over x2 is 2 minus x1, which is 3. Okay, simplify this. That's 2 over -1, which is -2. That's the first important step here. We need that slope. So m is -2. Now we're getting closer to this. Okay, now that we have m. So m is very important for a line. It tells us a lot of things, and we can use it like to graph a line easily. Okay, so first you want to find your slope. Now that we have the slope, so we're going to use since we have points and we have m, the slope, so we're going to use the point slope formula. Point, either one of these, doesn't matter, but we could use the first one, point slope. So now we can go ahead and use this formula here, point slope, because now we just found m. Let's use it to, basically we're going to redo this again. We're going to do the same thing as we did here to write the equation. The only difference here, we were given the m, but here we had to find it using these 2 points and the slope formula. So use A or use point slope point slope formula or form to write the equation. Okay, so again, you can use either point, but let's use this one. In this case, A is 3 and 2. And m, we do have it this time. We just found it. It's -2. So point and slope. Again, we called this one, we call it x1, y1. So point slope. So let's reuse this one again. The point slope formula. Let me write it down. So y2 minus y1 and the other one. Okay, that's what we call again the point slope formula. So you have, based on what you're given, you have to decide, figure out which formula to use. You know, there's a few of them here. This is basically the same formula, just written in different forms. And we have the other one, the m, which is the same basically as the other one. So technically, basically we have like two formulas to remember here. So that's the equation of the line. This is the slope formula, which we turn into point slope. So depending on the information given, so remember the names of these formulas, you can easily tell which one to use. So let's finish this one. So x1 again should go here. The y1 will go here. And the m will be here. And the equation will be almost done. We're just going to repeat basically these steps here. So at this point, again, no need to call these y2 and x2, just call them y and x. These will be replaced, so we won't be confused. Minus y1, which happens to be 2. M is -2. x2 turns into just x. No need to replace that. Minus x1, again, is from here, that's 3. Almost there. What do you do now? What is the next step? Everybody, so if you look at these steps here, what happens next in this equation?
-2 multiply x and -3.
That's right. So we're going to distribute.
Distribute it.
So we're going to distribute this before canceling this one. So it will be y -2. So this time this will be -2x. And +6. Now we can get rid of the -2 by adding it to both sides. Also here. That cancels, so y equals -2x plus 8. And the equation is complete. So once you finish your equation, it ends up in this y, m plus b form. Ends up like in this formula here. That's the reason why we cancel the number here, so we could have y by itself. Again, this is the y-intercept form. We can easily graph a line when it's in this form, as opposed to the standard form. So let's see how to graph this one quickly. So we're going to need a graph like this, x and y. So as always, you got to start from the y-intercept. So this is the y-intercept, which we called b. Always start from here and find that on the y-axis. Could be positive or negative. In this case, it's positive. So it's it's positive. So it's going to be up here. So if this is 1, this will the 8 will probably be. Let me make it look small. So for example, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, somewhere over here. That's your first point. The first point here. You want to mark it like that. Then we need to do the rise and run. We need to go to the m. So the slope here, what is the slope again from this formula? M is?
-2x.
Right. That's right. So the m is always next to the x. M is always next to the x. Slope, but it has to be in this form. The y has to be by itself before you can tell this is m. If the y here is not by itself, then this would not be m, it would be just some number. You have to first get the y by itself. Once you get the y by itself, the number next to the m, next to the x is the m or the slope. So the slope is -2, but the slope, as we saw before in the previous lecture, the slope has to be a rise over run. But we only have one number here, that's the rise. So what's the run here? What is the run in this slope? So the equation is this: we have the slope is -2, but to graph the line using rise and run, we need both. We need rise and run. If you don't have the run, what is it?
0.
This last time, not 0. How do you turn?
1.
You turn to -2 into a fraction, just put it over 1.
1. 1, yes.
That's right. So this is what we call the rise over run. So this is the M, this is the B. So you start from here. That's our starting point. Now we're going to do the rise and the run. So the rise is either up or down, depending on the sign. So from +8, this is a rise, -2. Are we going up 2 units or down?
Down.
That's right, down, because this is a negative number. If it was positive, it would go up. So let's go down here. It will be approximately here. So from +8, go down 2 units, 1 and 2, which take you to 6. And where do you go from here? Where do you go from 6? So we have
1 point to onyx line.
or to which direction?
It's a negative. It's a negative. A positive.
This one
Positive.
this one is positive.
Positive, right? Positive. Yeah.
So where do you go? Right or left?
Right.
That's right. Right. Go to the right.
Exactly. So start from 8, go down 2, then go to the right once. So 1 unit, right? Cross from 1 here. And that's your second point. And that's it. Now we can draw the line through these 2 points. So it's more convenient if you use a ruler. Use a ruler and graphing paper, which you can easily print out from the internet. And that's basically, so we had nothing but 2 points. We could have graphed these 2 points right away. If we were interested in the line itself, just the line, or the graph of the line, you would have just put the 2 points, these 2. We could have put these 2 here and draw the line, but the equation in this case was to write, or the question was to write the equation, right? The equation. That's why we had to do all this. But if you would just graph the points on the line, you would just take these, put them here, and draw the line. So we did the equation here, and then an extra step here, or an extra part of the question. If it asks you to graph it, to graph that line, then you can do this. So that's basically the 3 cases, how you write the equation of a line based on what information is given. Okay, so there are a few formulas. So mainly remember this one. Okay, and remember this one. These are the main ones we're using, basically. These are the main ones. This you don't have to worry about. This you need to find the slope. Okay, so basically you're either going to use this one or this one, depending on what's given. If you have M and B, slope and intercept, use that. If you have a point and the slope, use that. So those are the only 2 basically you need to remember. And also you remember this one, you need to find the slope first. If you don't have it, use the slope formula. This, for now, is not, it's not used at this point. We used it in the beginning when we didn't know the slope, but we didn't know the YMX form. We've been using this, and to graph this, that's when you do a lot of table. If you remember, we talked about the X and Y intercepts. So we do X and Y. We use this to graph, okay? But if you have this, it's more convenient and easy to graph, as we did here. You just start from here, rise and run. Immediately, you can get your line. But if it's in standard form, find what we called, this is the X-intercept. The second one is the y-intercept. And again, we talked about this in detail in a previous lecture. So this is the y-intercept. Okay, so that's when you need, when we use this, when you have standard form. But if you have this, which is very convenient, you can use it to do a lot of things, get the m, get the b, graph immediately. Okay, does that make sense, everyone?
Yes.
Everybody? Do you guys have any questions so far? We'll do a couple more examples like this. So let's do some examples here. So I'm gonna write an equation for each line. So the first case, let's say I'll give you m, I'll give you slope. Slope 2 and y-intercept -1, for example. That's the first case. Then second one, actually I'll write this closer. So slope 2 and y-intercept. And the other case, this time I'll give you the slope. M is 3/4. But actually, let's make things a little simpler. Let's say the slope is 5. And this time, and a point, maybe okay, so this case, given you the slope m, y-intercept, this one, the slope and a point. And the third one, nothing but 2 points. Let's say negative, or let's say 3, -1, maybe -2, and 4. Okay, so let's see if that works. So I'm going to do -2 minus, let's make actually this one, let's make it -3 here. Okay, we can work with that. So we have 3 different cases given different informations, different information. Let's see which formula to use in which case. So the first one, which formula do you use? For the first one, we have slope m, we have intercept. What is the formula that we use for this one?
Slope-intercept formula.
Right? So we have slope-intercept form.
Just plug in first.
That's right. So the slope-intercept form is this one. So I'm going to write it down. Y equals mx plus b. And we have everything we need. We just need to plug them. So this is a slope. It's also called m. So remember, if it's given you as a slope, remember that's m. So we're going to plug the m here. Then we're going to take the y-intercept and we're going to plug that here. And once we replace them, we're pretty much done. So m times x is 2 times x. And the b is -1. That's it. So the first one is the easiest, and that's done. Now this one has m, and it has p, a point, not b, not the y-intercept. not the y-intercept, just a point. So we have slope and a point. Which formula do we use? What's the formula for this one?
The point slope formula.
Exactly, point and slope. And this is a point slope formula here. Let's write it down again. So y2 minus y1 equals m times x2 minus x1. And again, your point here. So we have m, the point, label it x1, y1. This is, of course, the m. There's only one m here. So let's plug all that into the equation. So the m goes here, x1 goes here, and y1 goes here. So it will be y minus y1. So here, be careful. We have, where is it? Okay, x. All right, that's it. Y1 is 2 equals m again, which is 5, x2, or just x, minus x1. So be careful, we have two negatives. So we have x, we wrote it here. We have this negative, we did it here. Then we have x1, which also has a negative. So x1 is a negative, so it's going to be negative and another negative here. Okay, so be careful here. We have two negatives. One comes from here, the other one from here. Then we simplify, so -2 equals, so before we distribute, we need to first turn this double negative. What is minus 1 equal to? It turns into what? A double negative here.
+1.
That's right, it turns into +1. And now we're going to distribute again before canceling the -2. So we distribute, so it's 5x plus 5. Finally, add 2 here. So y equals 5x plus 7. And the equation is done. Okay, so using point slope. And finally, the longest one, this time we don't have anything at all. We have nothing but 2 points. Again, the purpose is to write an equation. Okay, to write an equation for each lines. For each line of these lines. Now we have 2 points. So what do you find first? What do we do?
We have to find slope.
Exactly. So we need the slope. Always need it. If you have it, that's good. If not, you need to find it. We're going to use these 2 points and the slope formula. This one here. To find the slope first. As always, you can label your points. First one is x1, y1. Second is x2, y2. So we're going to plug all that into this to simplify. Okay, so y2 is here. Again, be careful when you substitute, especially if you have negatives. So y2, we wrote it here. Immediately write this negative. It's always going to be there. Then you write whatever y1 is. What is y1 again? y1 is?
-1.
That's right, -1. So in addition to this negative from the formula, we have a negative from another negative because y1 happens to be negative. So we're going to have a double negative here. Then x2, which is here, this one, -2. And immediately write this negative from the formula. Then x1, what is x1?
-3.
That's right. X1 is here as -3. So we have a bunch of negatives. Okay, so one negative came from here. The other one came from X1 because X1 is -3. It's -3. Let's carefully simplify this. What do you do first here to simplify this numerator? Over here, this double negative turns into
+4.
positive 1. So negative and negative is the positive 1. And now let's turn that double negative into a positive as well. This negative stays here for now, -2. Negative and negative is positive. And back here, so we have 5 over over 3. Okay, so that's the first step. So first, you want to find your slope. But we're not done yet. We're looking for an equation. And finding the slope is just one step of it.
Professor, is it 5?
Is it where?
-2, -2 plus 5.
Would be +3. This one here?
Yes, yes.
So, I'm sorry, you're right. This should be +3, right?
3, yes, yes.
That's right. So we have negative and negative turns into positive.
Yes.
This will be 1, and it's convenient now, better. That's our slope. That's our first step. Okay, now that we have the slope and we have 2 points, which formula do we use next? We have
So we can, yes, we can use Pointslope Formula.
That's right. We can use point and slope now that we have a slope. Basically, this is the Pointslope formula. We use it when you have slope and a point. Either one again is fine from here. Let's use the first one. So we have -3 minus 1, and m, of course, m, the slope is 5. So we're going to plug those into this. Let's label this x1, y1, and of course that's our slope. So in the formula again, you don't need to replace x2 and y2 unless you're using this point. If you're using x2, y2, then you would replace these, not the other ones. But I think it's convenient if you leave x2 and y2 and you use the x1 and y1 instead. So this turns into y minus y1. What is y1 again? Is here. So we can have another negative. Okay, so y minus y1. So minus, first minus is here. Second one comes from y1. So this double negative turns into a positive later. Then m, which we found it using the slope formula, will be 5. And this turns into x, just x, minus x1. What is x1 again? x1?
-3.
It's -3. Again, we have a double negative. So again, be more careful when you have values or coordinates with negative numbers. So there's always going to be these negatives here, always going to be here. And you might have negatives in these as well, so be careful with that. So let's simplify a little bit. We can turn this double negative into a positive. And let's work inside here first. Negative and negative again turns into a positive. Now we can distribute this before canceling the positive 1. So 5x plus 15. Now we can do -1, -1. So y equals 5x plus 14. Okay, and that's your final equation here. Again, as you can see, always ends up in the slope-intercept form. And from here, you can use it to graph, like we did earlier, or to do other things. The M again is here, the y-intercept is here. You can do other things with it as needed. Okay, everyone, any questions? Because
No questions.
everybody else, you guys all right?
No question, thank you.
Okay. So that's basically how you can write any equation based on any information given of these three cases. So your formulas, the good news is I'll be giving you the formula in the exam. I'll write down the formula next to the question. So for example, here, if you're using this formula, I'll give you all the formulas. It will be given to you. You just need to use them properly. Okay, so again, to recap, we have the slope-intercept because it has slope and intercept. You have the slope formula itself if you don't have it. This is the standard form. We use this sometimes to graph, so we use the y and x and y intercepts. In addition to that, we can turn this one into point slope. So we can cross multiply and use it here. So if you have slope and b, that's the easiest one. Just plug them here. If you have m but not b, just another point. So use point slope formula. And if you have nothing, so use that first to find m. Once you find m, use it with another point, with one of these points, and using the point slope formula. And you can write any equations. Be extra careful with the negatives here. It's okay to end up with something like this. There's always going to be these two here, and these may or might not be negatives. So if they are negative, simplify them accordingly. Double negative turns into a positive. That does it for today. Let's go ahead and take some attendance. Also join the discussion board if you haven't done that already. Please go to week 12, post something there today for today's attendance participation. And meanwhile, I'll be taking the attendance.